And that kind of leads to, you know, absurdism is on some level what we're going toward with this next topic that we're going to end up talking about.
There's a lot of absurdity and a little bit of confusion over what actually happened.
Yeah.
So I could not tell it right. So Carrie, I will let you demonstrate for us. Explicate for us
it was good.
What happened.
It was subtle.
Well, basically now I own Contraband. This is
Oh, no.
What's it called? And to think I saw it on Mulberry Street by Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss got
one of these days somebody's going to give you a Bitcoin for that.
Oh God, I hope so.
Now you got me going.
It's for sale. Yeah, so you know, apparently what happened was the publishers, or no, the Dr. Seuss estate, I think, was the one who decided they were going to stop publishing 6 of their of the books that Dr. Seuss had created. And of course, Dr. Seuss is best known for all of his children's books and his witty, poetic type writing and his wonderful artistry. But Dr. Seuss had some unapproved opinions, which he later came to regret. But one of them was, you know, he was sort of racist against Asian people. And so this book talks about, or has a tiny little picture, which I'm not going to try and open up the book, but basically it's a picture in a corner of an Asian person, a generic Asian person. And he says something about a China man running with sticks, right? Which is the chapsticks, which is overly stereotypical, obviously. However, you know, his stepdaughter came out and said, hey, maybe we're overblowing this a little bit too much. He did come to regret his position, you know, on things like Japanese internment. Maybe we should just put, you know, a disclaimer at the front. I think somebody else has suggested that it get, you know, re-illustrated. You know, we can re-illustrate the book and take that part out. My personal opinion is that it's a conversation starter. You can actually use it to talk to your kids about some of the bad things that happened in our history. Why can't we talk about, you know, the fact that FDR actually interred Japanese Americans during World War II, and why that happened. So at any rate, that's the next big outrage is banning children's books.
Yeah, and I have to say, as stereotypes go, it was actually rather mild, if you ask me. And it really wasn't, I don't think, disparaging, but it is how a great way to say these are the ways that people saw each other in the past and what stereotypes actually can do to people, and why it's something that we don't necessarily want to do going forward. But now we can't have that conversation. And now we're just going to end up, and I think here is the issue with this. People believe that if we get rid of this, our better natures will prevail and we won't do it ever again. Unfortunately, as we all know, at least in this group, what tends to end up happening is that our sin natures take over and then we go and do it more. So it's a danger.
Well,
these are the same people who complain about us repeating history. Because we don't pay attention and we don't analyze and we don't think about how do we not repeat history.
Doug.
Well, it's like, well, hang on. If I don't even know that was part of history, that even happened, how am I supposed to avoid it? Yeah. Like the conversation starter piece, or re-illustrating it and then, you know, making a note of it in the back of the book for parents. You know, like, you know, the copy you had when you were growing up would have featured this on page 37. You know, but we changed that because of perceptions and we were wrong, or whatever you need to say. I mean, I'd be way more for that than
it's gonna be real fun when they come from Mark Twain.
Oh man.
Well, they already have.
But did they? Did I miss that part?
Well, that's been kind of like all, you know, sporadically all over the United States since like the 90s. They've been taking out of like library, you know, like
how many decades did I miss?
I mean, well, no, but it was like a local librarian did it, and it made news there, and so of course that outraged the right, because, you know, how dare we just take out books? But yeah, you know what? In the again, this was their choice to do this, so this isn't quite the state banning books, but it's getting awfully close to the left. Almost like I can easily see the path where the left wants the state to start doing this as sort of,
well,
just their regular MO in filtering.
Well, and
especially as we go digital.
The point is that I mean, we have, or at least we used to have, maybe we're going to ban the banned books list. Every year, libraries celebrate Banned Books Week to talk about which books have been banned, because usually they're banned because it talks about something that needs to be talked about. Right. So racism certainly falls under that category. We need to talk about it. My daughter had her 14th birthday last week, and she wanted to go enjoy Japanese ramen, like real Japanese ramen. And so we went to a restaurant, and we had a conversation about not just Japanese ramen, but how Asian cuisine in America started out very generic because of racism in America, because of the way Americans perceived anybody who was Asian. And so we got to have that conversation, and we got
because our palates were terrible.
That too. But at any rate,
bland taste.
I told them,
according to Captain America, they boiled everything back then.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
although you boil ramen. So anyway,
but we wouldn't have been able to have this conversation if it wasn't for the fact that my kids are aware of, Dr. Seuss, and that this thing exists. We have this book. Why is this going on, Mom? Like, it's a conversation starter, and that's what it should be. Yeah. We should say, look, there are things in our history that we're not proud of, and that's true for individuals just as much as cultures. And we should be able to correct our mistakes. The Dr. Seuss certainly did. According to his stepdaughter, he repented of his position, but nobody's talking about that, by the way.
We can't have that. We can't have repentance and forgiveness.
Right. So I think shutting down the conversation is just ridiculous. We should have the conversation so that we don't repeat history.
Yep.
2 points before we move off of this subject. One, I believe that the American left is becoming the new pearl clutching Victorians that want to ban all the things and make all the things and get scared at any slight of anything else. So it's just really kind of funny that the more left they go, the more conservative they become, and it's just kind of funny.
Crazy.
But also, I have to say, let's pat at least the Christian Bible publishers on the back a little bit, because I just wanted to pull this out. Because in the back of the book of Mark, you're going to usually read in some places that says the earliest manuscripts and some other ancient witnesses do not have Mark 16:9 through 20, but they still put it in anyway so that you can come up to your own conclusions. So I just want to say we're doing it right, and the locusts are doing it wrong.
Wow. Can we
That was perfect.
That's pretty fantastic. Can we also point out, though, that just like
from here,
while this is something that seems to be endemic of the left right now, as in currently, that, like, can we remember for a second too that in the 90s especially there was definitely a move from the right to also ban stuff.
Yeah.
Sure. So I think this is interesting to remember. It was something that my wife and I were talking about in the last couple of days, that this is not what we shouldn't do is attribute it solely to the political philosophy itself as being the reason that this is happening. But this is rather a function of the way human behavior takes turns for the worse. And so this is not like a leftism problem qua leftism in the same way that like socialism is just, or something like that, but rather this is something endemic to the human condition, and that we should be aware of it and strike it down wherever it comes up.
Right.
And beautifully stated, Norman. That's wonderful. No,
you're very welcome.
Totally agree.
That's a great way to pin that, because you're absolutely right.
Free Thoughts and Free Minds is the mantra of Reason, the magazine. And I really like that, even if I disagree with Reason on a whole lot of stuff at times. I still think that they're doing a great job of it. And, you know, I think that's the way we should be. We, you know, as if we as Christians think that we're, you know, on the side of truth in the long run, then we have no fear of incorrect ideas.
Yeah.
Let come
Yeah.
what may, we can destroy it all.
Yeah.
So
I
you know,
completely agree with what you just said. The one thing that I would note, though, that it doesn't quite feel the same, because it seemed like in the 80s and the 90s, when it was all about boycotting Disney and boycotting stuff, it was basically saying, well, they're not going to get the money of Christians if they're not going to you know, adhere to at least something similar to our values. You know,
yeah.
if they're
Well,
gonna
imagine what
promote
they would have done
promiscuity.
if they had had social media at the time.
Well,
Yeah,
that's fine. Okay, that's fine. But I maybe I'm wrong about this, but I don't think I would fear then what I do now, which is as soon as there's state power involved, then it's all downhill. Like the left is way more into book burning than they are the book boycotting.
I'm not sure I totally agree with that.
No?
But that's okay. Yeah, I think it's debatable. Like for one thing, there is you might be able to say they're into book burning now, but there's no way they could even accomplish it. Like, what are they going to do?
Fair.
Yeah.
Like, everything's digital.
But they're the ones making the arguments that this should just not be. They're not making the arguments that
Bring it.
They're not making an argument to their own
They
constituency.
can't eliminate Bitcoin. They won't be able to eliminate a book.
Well, I think the difference between the 1990s and now is that in the 1990s there were probably fewer people who really cared.
That's true. I mean, but again, is that then a function of the political situation in which we're in? That's very much, you know, oriented around the left, or is it actually just, well, it's
yeah, I think it's a function of polarization. The other difference is that we are more polarized now than we were in the 1990s. And so where, you know, the left and the right care only by virtue of the fact that they don't want to be what the other one is, right? And so that's driving it to a great deal. But the fundamental principle behind both movements is the same, which is there are certain things we don't want in our culture. And these people think that authoritarianism will solve the problem. And of course, libertarians are saying, no, it's not going to solve the problem. In fact, it will make it worse because you will inevitably repeat history.
When did conservatives in the 90s actually call for censorship and banning of the books from like a government level? It was all about, we're not giving them our money. We're not traveling to Disney. We're not buying Disney movies or going to Disney movies at theaters.
There were certainly movements to take stuff out of libraries.
Well, wasn't
Magic the Gathering was a big thing.
Wasn't the whole movie and television rating system about protecting the children and keeping them from seeing things and ideas that parents didn't want them to see?
That was before my
time. Can we just say inevitably that has become an abject failure, because once it comes on TVMA, you're like, ooh.
I know.
There's a lot of interesting stories around that. My favorite one is around Batman, the animated series from the 90s. But we're getting really far afield.
Wow,
but
way afield. Yeah, I maybe I'll just beg to differ on this one. I don't think it feels the same, although there are a lot of similarities. I totally agree. And your analysis of it, Norman, was definitely right. It just didn't seem to me like it was much of a threat in the 90s, whereas now you have the left wanting more power. They're wanting governors to tell people when they can take off their mask. They're going to want people to decide whether their kids can read or watch or do whatever it is, and they won't stop until other people are making the decisions they think they should be making.
And they believe they can do that because, frankly, they're the ability of certain amplification of voices via social media and the ability of you know, for those things to catch on and go viral. I mean, we didn't even have things like virality in the same way in the 90s.
Yeah.
Or the 80s for that matter.
I just want to give Doug a lot of credit because he's somebody on the internet who just said, I may be wrong. And that's very good. Doug.
And I also usually don't say that a lot.
That's it.
I
that
know,
should
I'm
be
just
like,
saying,
can we just clip that for the future?
Auto-tune it.
Very humble.
Auto-tune it.
I may be wrong.
Auto-tune the Doug.
Yeah.
We can meme it.